Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all doing fantastic and that you're all having an amazing day. And without further ado, let's jump right into it because there's an enormous amount of news to cover. Switzerland's largest banking institution, UBS Group, has entered into a merger deal with its troubled rival Credit Suisse. The former UBS Group will be paying $3.25 billion to finalize the deal, which is 60% less than what Credit Suisse was worth at the end of last week. Bitcoin reacted positively to the news, surpassing $28,500 for the first time since June of last year. An enormous portion of the news that we have been seeing for the last 5 or 6, I'll give it a good 7 days, a literal 7 days. And also what we may continue to see is the news of the cryptocurrency market and the stock market rising. There's an enormous amount of, it's not necessarily buying pressure, but we are getting very weird mimics of the beginning, middle of 2020. It appears as if the route that we are currently on has deviated quite dramatically just from 2 weeks ago, dealing with inflation, dealing with interest rates, you name it, that entire bag of issues, where now we are seeing that not only are banks not doing well, governments around the world are actively running forward to basically begin printing money again. The idea is that previously in 2021, when we saw the printing of money with low interest rates, the cryptocurrency market and the stock market began to rise quite rapidly. The extra money sloshing around eventually will begin to fall into our market as it did, and this is what we're currently experiencing or witnessing. It's not so much that Bitcoin is happy that the banks are being bailed out. It's that in order to do this, governments need to create extra sources of liquidity, extra sources of money, and they don't, and I air quote here, come out of thin air. They have to be created on the computer by entering numbers, and that's how money is basically created. The Swiss banking behemoth Credit Suisse revealed significant operational issues in the past few weeks, prompting Switzerland's central bank and the local financial regulator to step in. UBS responded to the intervention, agreeing to acquire. It's insane. Like, you have to understand how significant this actually is. This is similar to Bank of America collapsing, and then JP Morgan being like, okay, cool, we'll just buy you. Like, this acquisition has such far-reaching consequences, even just farther than like, oh, okay, cool, the bank got bailed out in this sort of way. It's like, no, UBS is also absolutely monstrously gigantic. What must have been happening behind the scenes for a credit institution as large as Credit Suisse to have collapsed means that something is terribly, terribly, terribly wrong with the entirety of the system. We would normally see cracks at the bottom of the pyramid beginning to form. You would never normally see, they have so much liquidity and so much money at the top. It's very hard to shake that portion of the pyramid, if you will. But to see the larger banks now like scrambling, like, we have a problem, there's something wrong, and you are going to read news that a portion of this has to do with us, that this is our fault. You may have been reading a lot about bank runs. The main topic that a lot of the financial websites, which are probably owned in part by the banks or the larger institutions, deals with the idea of bank runs. The public keeps, feeling unconfident about what's happening with the banks, and therefore they're running to the banks to try and get their money out. And it's because of this, we need extra security to be able to make sure that there's enough liquidity in this market, yada, yada. Because for those of you who missed it, now this is what it actually is. This isn't tinfoil hat. This is the actual situation. Banks do not hold all of the money that they say that they are holding. They never have, and they never will. This is how the banking system functions, and this is how it actually flourishes. If they have 100,000 customers, they are maybe at any given time, maybe only holding the money for around 5 to 10,000 of those people, like in its entirety. Banks use the money that you deposit with them for other banking operations. It's usually them betting on and or taking your money to put into other world markets so that the bank continues to make an enormous amount of money. They're always betting on other markets, and this is why at the end of the year you hear that the bank made an enormous amount of profit. It's just not from the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 plus dollars that they're taking from you every single month to hold your money. They're using it in the background as well. So when it comes to the idea of liquidity, there's that word again. If everyone tried to take out their liquid cash at the exact same time, you would find that, and everyone else is finding out that, the banks do not have this money because they're never expecting it. Like if you have $28,000 in the bank, at any given time, you are probably not going to take out all $28,000. We have been conditioned our entire lives to believe that the bank is the safest place to hold it. Why would I walk around with all my money in my hand? Why would I keep it in my house? Why would I have it in digital money, or why would I have it on a ledger? The bank is the safest place, therefore, let me not take out all my money. If you've ever tried before, this is years and years and years ago. I was closing a bank account. It had a large amount of money inside of it, what have you. And I went to, because I got tired. The bank was far too far. They didn't have the website was terrible. In order to, I wanted to basically switch it from one bank to another. That was kind of my idea. I was like, okay, I'm just going to go to like a larger bank branch so that I have a better online experience when dealing with my money. And I went to the other bank and I was like, hey, I need to close my account. And the woman's eyes were like, excuse me? And she for 30 minutes, she tried to reassure me and tell me that this bank was the best. This bank was the so-and-so. She actually went to the back and got her manager and was like, he was like, hey, what's up, buddy? And I was like, I would like to take, all my money out so I can move it somewhere else. He's like, why would you, times are really rough. And I was like, can I please have my money? It took so long for them to finally write a check and hand it over to me. And they looked worried as I left. And this is because no one is expected to ever actually do this at any given point in time. So on this news that other banks are also currently feeling the crunch, not doing well, and that the governments are actively coming out to save them, world markets are a bit confused for a number of reasons. Does this mean that other banks are going to collapse? If there is a massive collapse and people really figure out there isn't all that money there, what will this do to markets? Or are banks collapsing? Have we seen the worst of it? Is there more to come? Will there be more bailouts? Will this then cause extra money to then flow into markets, which would then cause the markets to go up? Literally no one knows what's going on except for the people behind the scenes who are pulling the strings at the banks, who know, how good or how bad things actually are for them. One of the most popular news stories, as you might have imagined, is Bitcoin constantly moving up in price. For those of you not looking at the screen, it says Bitcoin is up 23%. I believe that's over the last 7 days. As history repeats itself with macro downtrend broken. A lot of people believe that because of this upward swing in our markets, that we are currently in the beginning of the 2024-2025 bull run. Can this be categorically explained and or confirmed? No. The world is still a mess. Let me reiterate that for all of you. Don't forget the other 95 things that we were just dealing with last week. Everything is still a mess. However, we are seeing, like I said, indications of 2020 beginning to reappear. The news and situations that we got before for the Fed seemed to be crystal clear. But as we are now understanding that there's more broken than just inflation, it looks like this extra push of liquidity from governments is going to continue, which means printing money. And therefore, this would have a positive effect on our market if this continues to happen. It says U.S. futures are mixed after UBS buys Credit Suisse to stem bank crisis. U.S. stock futures were mixed on Monday as the Swiss government engineered a forced takeover of Credit Suisse by UBS, marking the latest effort by governments around the world to stifle a crisis threatening the banking sector. They're actually terrified, and that I think is one of the weirdest situations that we have right now. Historically, when the market makers and the larger higher ups see something breaking, you typically hear from them, okay, it's fine, whatever, like this is going to happen. But you can visually see as they're talking that something is actually wrong and they can't get it under control. And this is why we're seeing these, what they're calling a forced takeover. But we're seeing these rapid acquisitions taking place right in front of our eyes. Usually if there's if something is failing, historically, you would normally see companies and maybe sometimes even governments waiting for the problem to collapse so that they can openly go in front of us and say, well, the problem is gone. This will never happen again. But these acquisitions and these mergers are taking place within 2 to 3 days. They're making sure that the public knows, hey, nothing's wrong. Everything's fine, I promise. What happened last week was just a, small hole in the wall. It's never going to take place again. Understand, oh, the crap, there's another one. And then it keeps tumbling out of control in this way. This is why stock markets right now are completely mixed. I think Asian stock markets the ones in Eastern Asia are currently up. Stocks in India are currently trending sideways down. U.S. stock futures are slightly up. Banking stocks are down as people are wary of when U.S. markets open that there's going to be extra news of a continued contagion or something else has gone on. I think the market basically needs either good news, I know that sounds stupid, or we need news of continued bailouts and or extra money being printed or created. And that will then push up all the markets at the exact same time. But the markets usually wait for the U.S. stock markets to open, and that ends up being the big then. It says what to watch for from the Fed's March rate decision. So here we are, friends. This is the time we've been waiting for. On the 22nd of March, the Federal Reserve of the United States, look at the face they gave him for the photo. The Federal Reserve will announce its update Fed funds target. Markets are suspecting a 0.25 rate hike seems likely, with a slightly smaller chance of holding rates steady. However, this Fed meeting is relatively uncertain when compared to most in recent years. The last 2 years have seemed quite evident. We knew that they were going to raise rates by 0.75% every single time it happened. The market reacted as if it didn't know and wasn't just told about a day and a half ago that this was going to happen. We have seen that a 0.25 increase in rates has had a positive effect on markets because it means a dwindling down from the 75 to a 25 and eventually to a 0. A lot of people expected central banks to not raise interest rates at all over the last couple of days during this banking situation that we currently find ourselves in. A lot of people believe that we might see no rate hike at all. I think they can't do that. I think a 0.25 is going to be the sweet spot, if you will. 0.75 would destroy the markets. It would actually completely crumble everything that we see before us. But the uncertainty lies in the fact that it's easy to raise interest rates by 0.25% if it's just inflation that they're trying to combat. But when you talk about some of the top 20 banks just within the United States and other major banks around the world are currently also collapsing due to not only a distrust, but also an uneasiness in the markets. People want the interest rates to stop regardless of what the Fed wants. The Fed also mentioned before, for those of you who missed it, in last week's video, they're willing to break the markets to get inflation under control. They're willing to have hundreds of thousands of more people lose their jobs, for company valuations to completely collapse, just to say that the US dollar is no longer as inflated as it currently is. So, But the banking crisis, of course, as it says right here, adds complexity to their analysis. So people are going to be listening very carefully to what they say. They always give like little weird hints. If you've never listened to a Fed meeting, it's always the same but different. So they'll say things without actually saying it. Like, so someone's like, hey, how'd you like that book? You're like, it had pages that had ink on them. The ink on them made words that I have not read since I was in university. University was a time in my life that I cared for, but it's really like that. Like, it just doesn't, they won't say what they're actually thinking. So people always look out for the hints and clues of what they're saying. And one of the hints that we're looking for is A, are you raising rates? B, will this be the last time you're raising rates? C, are you going to be raising them until the end of summer because the market can't take anymore? And D, which has now flown into the realm of possibility, when will you be lowering rates? Yeah, that's one that was also a little bit unexpected, but is now being discussed if you watch Bloomberg and or other financial television news. They're now discussing, or analysts are saying that they think that sometime this year, the Fed will have to announce that they're lowering interest rates, which will also then subsequently cause all markets to begin to pop up, because it means that essentially, air quotes, when you lower interest rates, something is wrong and you need to stimulate the economy. And this is where we are currently at the moment. It says U.S. Fed and other central banks take coordinated action to assure dollar liquidity. You understand what's being said there? The U.S. Federal Reserve announced that it has collaborated with the Swiss National Bank, the Bank of England, the Bank of Canada, the Bank of Japan, the European Central Bank, and once again it says the Bank of Canada, in a coordinated effort to enhance the supply of liquidity. How do you increase liquidity? You print money through the established U.S. dollar swap line arrangements. The action, which followed a deal supported by Swiss authorities to have UBS purchase rival Credit Suisse to stop its disorderly collapse, demonstrates the serious worries central bankers have regarding the recent turmoil in the financial system on both sides of the Atlantic. Yes, I told you there was a lot at the beginning of the video. There's an enormous amount that's currently taking place. I have a friend. Hello, friend, if you're watching. He's like we sit down in cafes. I'm not joking. We sit down in cafes and order cake and tea, and we literally... It's so funny. Well, like, it's always the same thing. The first 30 seconds are like, hey, how are you? How's everything? How's everything going? And then we're like, oh gosh, did you see the markets? And the next 9 hours are us literally having cake, discussing the markets. It's great. Anyway, we've been discussing how weird it is that all of this is happening like now. You hear about these things, or you assume that they're further down the line, or we've heard of the Great Depression and like the mega banking crisis, or things that happened in the 80s, you know, what was it, Black Monday. But to actually be going through them, it's like, oh, this isn't nice. Now I see why so many people were panicking. But yeah, at the moment, we are currently... I say mud, but there's another word that I want to use. You know which word that is, but we are all walking through the mud together. Some people angrier than others, and some people more hesitant, some people more greedy, just seeing where the markets are actually going to be moving. This week, I know I've said it before, you've seen it in other video titles, or even in other thumbnails. This week is going to be incredibly important to the cryptocurrency space, because this is the week the week that we've been waiting for since last summer, as I mentioned before. So what happens this week is going to set the direction for the markets for the future, and we'll see what the Fed decides to do. That's all the price news, if you will, money news, I don't know, that we are currently having right now. And yeah, let's move on. and also one of the most popular news stories of the day. And this happens on purpose. And I'm a bit exhausted with people reporting this news as if it's something that we should praise and or worship and be like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy that this finally is taking place. Last week, Larry Fink, the chairman and chief executive officer of BlackRock, the world's largest everything, it was like $19 trillion in assets under management, wrote about crypto as part of his annual chairman's letter to investors. It talks about how BlackRock was started and yada, yada, yada. Now they're worth trillions. On the 13th of October, 2017, pay attention to the date, Larry Fink called Bitcoin an index of money laundering, 2017. He said, Bitcoin just shows you how much demand for money laundering there is in the world. That's all it is. On the 4th of August, 2022, Coinbase and BlackRock joined hands, skipped through a meadow of flowers, and announced that they were going to be creating an institutional solution for cryptocurrencies. For those of you who have not been here, who may be new to the channel, or who have simply forgot, welcome. One of the main things about 2017 is that we saw an egregious amount of billionaires openly announce how terrible and horrible Bitcoin was. Bitcoin's the worst thing in the entire world. No one needs Bitcoin. Bitcoin is for terrible people, for money launderers, for other words that I can't say. They've said it all over and over. And the problem that I have, but besides the literal lying, is the fact that nearly all of these billionaires told hundreds of millions of people not to get into Bitcoin because it was a farce, because it was terrible, and these people could have gotten into Bitcoin at a very low price and made an enormous amount of money. But can you guess who made the money? It was the billionaires, because we found out multiple times that as they were telling everyone else that Bitcoin was terrible and was for money laundering, they were buying it in the background. We heard this explicitly many times in 2020, 2021, and 2022. They all came out and said, yeah, we've been into Bitcoin since around 2016. And it's like, oh, so you actively, openly lied to everyone back in 2017 about not buying Bitcoin. The news now is, it says it's somewhere around here. That's 2022. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. The point is, this man recently came out and said that he sees a very large amount of promise for digital assets and cryptocurrencies. He thinks that they still have some issues, similar being FTX. However, in emerging markets, this could be absolutely dramatic for is bringing the cost down and advancing financial inclusion. This man does not care about financial inclusion at all. He cares about his wallet and his money and the financial inclusion for himself and his family. So the news today is that one of the richest people on the planet, if probably not the richest, no one knows exactly how many assets this man has, basically came out to talk about how amazing cryptocurrencies are. Do you think he had a light bulb revelation, or do you think he's just simply been fibbing the entire time? This happens all the time. We had it so many other, it's been at least 7 or 8 billionaires around the world, and you can always tell, at least for me, from my opinion, when the tipping point actually is when you hear these billionaires coming out in mass on TV or talking out in public saying, yeah, Bitcoin's the greatest thing. This means that they have an enormous amount of cryptocurrencies and they feel confident enough that they're going to make an additional couple of $1 billion. And then they tell everyone else, well, now you should be getting into it. Now's the time. Now's the time for you to buy, because, it's amazing now that I have so much of it. So this was also incredibly popular news. It always is. There will be another billionaire in 6.5 weeks who's going to be like, oh, I saw the error of my ways and now we are, you get it. That's the billionaire now cares about financial inclusion. You know what would also show that he cared about financial inclusion if he gave away about $35 billion to families who are struggling because of inflation? How many of you think he's going to do that? Somebody raised their hand. Put it down. You know good and well. That's the Larry Fink news. Let's move on. Also, in what are you talking about? The Trade Association for the Australian Banking Industry, the Australian Banking Association, okay, fun, has launched a cost of living inquiry to closely study the impact of C19, global supply chain constraints, and geopolitical issues, among others, on Australians. An analysis of the rising inflation. Oh, inflation is also terrible in Australia as well. If you don't watch YouTube videos, go look at some. It's also, it ain't doing too good. An analysis of the rising inflation and concurrent collapse of three major banks, Silicon Valley Bank, Silvergate Bank, and Signature Bank. They don't even have, what's the other one? Credit Suisse. Recently proved that more than 100, here we go, has recently proved that more than 186 banks in the United States are at risk of a similar shutdown. 186 banks in the US are at risk of a similar shutdown if depositors, that's you, decide to withdraw all of their funds. ABA's inquiry aims to identify ways to ease the cost of living in Australia and the government's fiscal policy response. ABA acknowledged that many Australians would struggle to adjust to a higher cost of living, while it may be easier for some. Tell me what this sentence means to you. Their bank acknowledged that if inflation goes up, things are going to be difficult, but it'll be easier for some people. Who do you think it's going to be easier for? Is it the person working 70 hours a week, or is it the person who already has millions and billions of dollars? I don't know why. I feel like we as a society would simply be better off if banks just didn't do things like this, like making these surveys or trying to figure out what's going on. Like what a medium-sized slap to the face to be like, oh yeah, we caused this, but if it continues, there will be some people who will struggle. People have been struggling for a long time. Rent is, oh my gosh, there's so much happening in Australia, the UK, the US, you name it. Start YouTubing videos like Housing Crisis, or like Housing Crisis Australia, London, UK, US. There's so many things going on. Rent for some places, these listen, I am also a landlord. However, I make sure that people can afford the actual rent. During the height of C19, you know what I'm saying, people were actually giving discounts because nobody wanted to live in their apartments or in big cities anymore. So they were giving discounts to people. And I mean, like, you get an extra $100 off to live in this place. And then the moment, like now, that no one's wearing things on their facial area anymore, people have risen rents by 20 to 50%. And I've seen some documentaries or videos online, what have you, looking at videos constantly of these landlords being like, yeah, we raised the rent and now nobody wants to rent it. What? You're $4,000 per month, one bedroom. Nobody wants to rent that? I'm so shocked. What do you mean? It seems like an absolute bargain. There are so many people. I mean, whatever. That's a whole nother video. That's an entirely different video because so many people were told to leave their premises permanently. And then they raised the rents and they were like, yeah, we can't find anyone now. Why not just have the tenant who was there for the last 15 years who wasn't actually paying? Anyway, so I hate things like this. And I think banks do this and have studies like this to try and show that they know what's going on in the world. That, like, hey, I'm one of you. I know exactly what's going on. If things continue to be terrible, some people will have a time of struggling to adjust. It's like, please just go away somewhere. After that, a lot of the news was really weird and random. I don't really know how else to kind of categorize it. It says Ethereum price prediction, will ETH hit $2,500 soon? Maybe, maybe not. No one actually knows. I'm shocked that Ethereum is still below $2,000 simply because we now have indications as to when the next upgrade is going to happen. Maybe it'll simply happen a little bit closer. But Ethereum has oddly struggled as the most used blockchain within our solar system. Has had a difficult time moving above $1,700. It took it like a couple of weeks while Bitcoin was pumping. We just got above $1,800, and Ethereum's, I would ask, when do we move above 2,000? That seems a little bit more realistic for things. After that, I guess maybe sky's the limit, but there's a lot of weird pressure on the price of Ether as if it's not. Anyway, it says Bitcoin bear market ends was 28,000. Was that the evidence? That sentence makes no sense. A lot of people think that $28,000 was the level of resistance that we've been waiting for to break through, to re-enter, the stratosphere, if you will. Over the next couple of days, you will see other people talking about 30,000 and 35,000. I think these are meant to be the numbers on charts that if we break through them, it's kind of like, remember when Bitcoin was around, was it like 16,000 or something like that? And we needed to push past, I think, 19,800. It was some arbitrary number in order to be able to know that Bitcoin had broken like one level of actual resistance. I think 28,000 was the other one, and we broke through that. And now we need to see if Bitcoin continues up until 35,000, which people are saying maybe by the end of summer. Don't hold your breath. The world is a mess right now. Then that kind of recategorizes the bullish trend, the bullish up movements for this year, and therefore new all-time highs 2024, 2025. The entire mantra. It says Ethereum may exponentially outperform Bitcoin in the coming cycle. And it's actually, I got happy when I read this, not because I want Ethereum to outperform Bitcoin. This is nearly a mimic of the news that was popping around in 2017 and in 2021. Whenever, historically, I do not know if it's going to re-happen. Historically, whenever we've had, especially Raoul Pal, Mike Novogratz, and there's one other person announcing that Ethereum is going to outperform Bitcoin, this is usually when the bull market happens. It's always when there's like this extra form of pressure, buying pressure put on Ethereum, that Bitcoin kind of begins to lose its mind. It's happened every single time. It always starts out with a bunch of analysts saying that they think that Ethereum is going to outperform Bitcoin. This also usually is mimicked by people saying that they think that Ethereum will become the number one coin. People hear this. They begin to buy Ethereum. Ethereum has a lot of upward pressure. The price begins to move. But Ethereum's market cap isn't that far away from Bitcoin. So what ends up happening is a lot of people who believe in Bitcoin and are already buying tons of Bitcoin, they begin to buy more to make sure that Bitcoin remains the number one coin. Ethereum pumps, Bitcoin pumps, the rest of the altcoin market pumps as well. So when I saw this, I was like, okay. So no matter where we are, what we're doing, everything is just completely cyclical all the time. And we are back in the cycle. Once again, if you haven't noticed, because prices have been moving back up. So Ethereum usually tends to outperform Bitcoin historically. Bitcoin goes up by 7, Ethereum goes up by 14%. Other altcoins go up by 28% at the exact same time. It's just normal. However, this is usually the precedent for the beginning of the Ethereum market and dragging every other coin up with it. There's also tons of news of an Arbitrum airdrop. A lot of articles saying to watch out for fake airdrops. Apparently, something called Arbitrum is having an airdrop. I would go to their actual website or go to their official Twitter page. Do not click on any weird websites or links or go somewhere else where you should not be going thinking that you're going to have a no. Always go directly to the source. This is how you get the actual airdrop, because you'll see stuff on Twitter or on Reddit or other places where people telling you, hey, click this, this is a link to it. It's not. Go to the source. Don't be lazy. Type in the actual letters in your web browser box and find what's actually going on. There's a lot of people who are now trying to put on their hero capes It's similar to the collapse of FTX, which I all told you about. These people don't care about us, and I can't make that any more crystal clear ever. Like, it just is what it is. However, during the collapse of FTX, all these people who would never, ever, if they saw you hungry on the street, they would not give you a bite of their sandwich, ever, began to come forward and say, Sam Bankman-Fried, evil. We need better. We need to do better. This is terrible. This is egregious. And now you realize you don't hear from these people at all again. As this entire banking situation is happening, a lot of people within crypto, a lot of senators and stuff like that. I think Elizabeth Warren was also one of them. And they're all screaming quite loudly, the U.S. banking system is causing this crisis. The government's doing it. We need to do better. And it's like, no, wait, stop. Because you also benefit from the U.S. banking system. You work with the U.S. banks and the other banks that are now collapsing. We should have already had cryptocurrency owned and cryptocurrency centric banks 7-8 years ago. I've mentioned that in multiple different videos. Yes, we know that the government created this crisis because that's what governments do. They continue stepping on things until it breaks, and then the people have to pay for it, literally, through their taxes. And then we always sit there and go, oh my gosh, how is this happening again? Because we keep letting this loop take place over and over. I would love if during all of this, people actually realized what Bitcoin was for. And simply, and I don't mean, throwing millions into it, hedge their bets, if you will, and started getting some crypto to really understand, you can't fake how much Bitcoin you have. You can't have a bank say, oh, we have 1 Bitcoin, but we're currently lending out 100 Bitcoin. That will not work. So the only way for it to happen is for things to continue breaking until people realize exactly why we have Bitcoin. We have a new system that no longer relies on the old system. So just gonna throw that out there. And also in constant news, like this will never probably end. Ripple versus SEC. Deaton predicts Hinman emails will be made public. Sure, I don't care anymore. Like I sincerely don't care. The amount of news about Ripple versus SEC and the lawsuit and stuff like that, I don't know. No one actually cares. Just end the lawsuit. The fact that we're almost in April and there still is no finality from the judge. What is she looking at? What more do you need? If we, the public, figured out that the SEC was lying, what more needs to happen? If the Hinman emails become public, cool. We'll know for a fact that the SEC was definitely lying. If they're not made public, no one will actually really bat an eye. It's more of a just end the lawsuit already. I know this guy on the screen is not the cause of the lawsuit. It's just more of a, sure. People keep talking about this every single day, talking about where XRP is going to go. I saw something like a day or two ago that the title was Coinbase to relist XRP immediately after lawsuit. And it was someone saying that they believed that the day of the end of the lawsuit, that XRP would be relisted. And I'm like, just stop. Stop all the speculation. No one actually cares. There's so many other things actually going on in the world. Whoever you are, Miss Judge Woman, I appreciate that you've gotten this far over the last 2 years through all this nonsense. Just give the ruling. Just do it. Like, no, this is all right. Moving on. Every single day. This is in the news every single gosh darn day. As always, a very special thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. American Crypto Academy. Martin Steuer. I almost read Bodie with 2 O's. Bodie McBoatface. Sam Ratter, Dotha Diddy, Manny Cryptos, Crypto Gambino, Auspicious Agile and Blockchain, Jamie Saad. And let's move on. Empire Queen, Roman Gaba, Bitcoin Ben Arachno, Dave the Dealers, Den Captain Summing in the Z-Way, Lay Mo Barazi, VB Nerd 21. Lauren De Silva, Quoted Biddy, Troy Allgood, Space Case, Need a Miracle, Paternoster, Navarro Williams, Utopia 569, Moonman High, XRP Nostromo, John Sarson, The Animal Reader, A Bibliophobia, Adam Graysick, Wise Night Owl, 242 to the World, Bankroll Network, Crypto Artist, Coley 3D, Setsuna, Paxis, Jeremy Fox, Jim Gardner, Minting Coins, Yes to Crypto, Anytime Fitness, Monk's Corner Staff, Bake Me a Cake, Tigara Macho Nisa, and On Crypto with Lionel. Thank you all very, very much for your support. Thank you to everyone who has bought a ledger recently. Thank you very much for those of you who have figured out that you need to self-custody. Thank you to everyone who left a like, who has left a comment, or who has subscribed to the channel. Welcome. At the moment, Bitcoin is at 28,268 US dollars. It is up by 4%. It seems to be like the winner of the top 10 coins, except for other coin. I'm allowed to say, I won't say it. Bitcoin is pumping harder than the other coins right now, which is a little bit surprising. Usually we see not the inverse, but kind of they all move up together. I think it's just a huge amount of uncertainty. Bitcoin fell over the course of the evening and then rose back again. The coins have no idea what to do. Anything else that like broke the trend? Anything else that looks completely insane? That's wrapped Bitcoin. Nope. Filecoin is up by 3%. Yeah, you see like there's so much confusion. No coins really know where to go at the moment. Kronos is up by 5%. Something called Stacks is up by 10%. Sure, why not? Live your best life. EOS is up by 8.9% for those of you who missed the news last week. The EOS team has announced a rebranding, and they're coming back, and they're going to be stronger than ever than they were before. They're also launching an Ethereum virtual machine to be able to have Ethereum transactions and Ethereum apps on top of EOS, and I assume this is why the 8.9% is there. And something called Conflux Network. I'm not going to even touch that one. I do hope that you've all enjoyed. I do hope sincerely that you all are having a great day, great morning, great afternoon, great evening, wherever you are, wherever the heck you might be. I do hope it is absolutely fantastic. Thank you all once again for watching, listening, liking, commenting, and or supporting. And I will most certainly be talking to you all soon. See you.